Okay, folks, it is 6 p.m., so we're going to get started. So if you can please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, next we have roll call of board members.
Oh, it's hot.
Tim Ahrens,
Here.
Jill Kester,
Here.
Linda Slopsma,
Here.
Wendy Hoeksema, present, Randy Milnick.
All right, the next thing on the agenda is to set, adjust, and approve the meeting agenda. I have one request for an item to add to the agenda, and it relates to accepting a donation to the Whitewater Township Park. I'd like to add that under item number G towards the end of the meeting after the board discussion regarding the civil infraction ordinance. Is everybody in support of that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, any concerns?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
And I will second that motion. So motion made to approve the agenda as amended by Ahrens, seconded by Slopsma. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None opposed. Motion passes. So next we have declaration of conflict of interest. Does any board member have a conflict of interest with the content of tonight's meeting?
No.
No.
No. All right, no conflict of interest. So now I'm going to review the rules for public comment. And I want to just preface this by saying we are first have general public comment. So this is not the time for comments on the civil infraction ordinance. This is general public comment. And then there will be public comment during the actual public hearing on the civil infraction ordinance. So the rules for public comment. Any person shall be permitted to address the meeting of the Township Board. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Comments shall be directed to the board with questions to the chair. Any person wishing to address the board shall speak from the lectern or via Zoom during the public hearing portion and state your name and your address. Persons may address the board on matters that are relevant to township government issues, and we will ask that they not exceed 3 minutes due to the number of people that are present tonight. And that 3-minute time limit does exclude any time needed to answer specific board questions that may be asked. In order to avoid unscheduled debates, the board generally will not comment or respond to presenters. Silence or non-response from the board should not be interpreted as disinterest or disagreement by the board. Further, I would like to mention that we have some chairs over here. So I do expect a lot of public comment. So whoever would like to be next after the current speaker, if you could use those chairs, it'll save some time and improves the safety of anybody getting out of the bleachers. So at this time, would anybody like to make a general public comment? Oh, try again.
Test, test. 1, 2. Testing, testing. We apologize for that. It's very echoey in here, so let's use this microphone for now. Sorry about that.
Test, test.
Yep.
Okay, Julie Zenas.
So there's a
9-3.
sign-in sheet there.
Pardon me?
There's a sign-in sheet there, did you?
I can sign, you want me to sign it now and take the time to sign it now? That's gonna fall.
So there are sign-in sheets that were at the entrance. If you haven't signed those yet, if you plan to make a public comment, we could save some time by you getting a hold of one of those sheets that we have. Is this working? This seems kind of light, yeah. Yeah. Want that light? Yes.
Test, test.
Got it.
Works. Okay. Julie Zenas, 9373 Skagamog Point Road. So good evening, members of the board. Is it all right, or is there too much feedback? Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Before the public hearing begins, I would like to request a point of clarification. The attorney's presentation, included in its meeting packet, provided an example, Harold and his collectibles, of how this ordinance would be enforced. Could the board or the attorney also walk us through 2 additional examples to help clarify its application? Specifically, one example of how it would apply to and address illegal short-term rentals, and another how it would apply to structure land permits. This would help clarify transparency and give residents a clearer understanding of how the enforcement process would operate. Additionally, Treasurer Jill Kester should recuse herself from all discussions, decisions, and matters concerning short-term rentals and their enforcement due to a public acknowledged conflict of interest on April 18th of 2025. Her continued involvement in STR enforcement discussions raises ethical concerns. Under Michigan ethical standards, both actual and perceived conflicts require recusal to maintain public trust. The proposed municipal civil infraction ordinance 2025-2051 enables enforcement of zoning violations, including those related to STRs, through civil infractions and civil citations. Since STRs are under this enforcement framework, Ms. Kester's involvement compromises the integrity of the process and sets concerning precedents for ethical governance. Thank you.
Stick it back in here. Okay, the next person may step forward for general public comment. Does anybody else want to make a general public comment tonight? Oh,
Sorry, I thought that they were going to speak as well.
right.
Just as the lady prior to me had spoke, I think that Randy Milinek also should recuse himself from any decisions that are made. Last year, we live on Wheeler Oaks. I'm sorry, I don't know if I said my address, 9043 Wheeler Oaks Drive. And Randy lives down the road, and him and his wife went as far as to hire an attorney to shut us down. We had a camper on our property where we live, and we used to rent that out. Anyway, so they saw fit to try to shut us down legally, and then we had to hire an attorney to fire back at it. And we do other things on our property. I run concealed pistol licensing classes out of my house. My wife offered goat walks, and anyway, so they were trying to shut us down in any way they could. In the emails that they were sending back and forth, it also included lies saying that we were serving alcohol on our property and other things such as that. And all these things are absolutely non-true, but I do think that that would be a conflict of interest, as the person next prior to me had stated. So, thank you.
Doesn't know who he is.
Excuse me, the last person, we were not able to hear your name clearly, so could you please come back and repeat your name, please? Yeah, and go ahead, if you can speak your name clearly.
It's Dan Brewer, Brewer.
Thank you. And Mickey, you need to direct your comments to the board, so you need to move the podium back where it was. Your comments are to the board.
I'm speaking to the board, but I'm also addressing the public. It is a public hearing, so
Yes,
I'm
that's
talking to
fine.
both.
Mickey,
Board, thank you for the
You
opportunity.
need to face the board so we can all see you. We've got the sound system, and yes, that's fine.
I am not talking with my back to you folks. I'm talking to you as well. Mickey Dean, 4020 Farrell Road in Williamsburg. This is from 9 and 10 News. A northern Michigan community is now taking action to make sure people don't break their rules. The township used to take violators to court, but they wanted to have a faster way to hold people accountable. Sounds pretty topical with the topic before us tonight, yes? Any idea what they're talking about there? This is regarding Peninsula Township 6 months ago. They kind of took a media tour touting the fact that they just did what the board is trying to do tonight, which is to put in place a municipal civil infraction ordinance. Very similar to what we're talking about, okay? 3 months later, same news department talks about the $50 million federal lawsuit that Peninsula Township lost and is now facing that judgment. And they are also talking as one of the options to handle the $50 million is to burden all of us because they don't have the money. The citizens do. So to go from we are touting the fact that we have a civil municipal infraction ordinance to 3 months later be facing a $49 million judgment, we really need to be cautious of where we're headed because I'm very concerned that we're heading for a lawsuit. Okay, what's going on with short-term rentals right now is very similar to what was going on in Peninsula. It doesn't take much Google work to get exactly what I'm quoting from today, okay? So as a general comment, I'm fearful we're heading for a lawsuit. And just to put it in context for each one of us, $49 million and change on the citizens of Peninsula Township is $7,000 per resident. That's coming. Take that same judgment and apply it to Whitewater Township, it's near $10,000. That's per resident, not for property owner. So if you got 3 residents sitting on your property and they got to put the tax on one place, it's 30 grand. Okay? That's where we're headed. You can look at the lawsuit, take the words right out of the federal judge's mouth as to why they lost that judgment, but it was basically random enforcement of confusing and often non-existent ordinance. Okay? It's coming. I'll save my comments for the civil infraction when we get there. Thank you very much.
Does anybody else have a general public comment?
Randy Steelman, 7315 Crisp Road. I just want to make a quick comment regarding people recusing themselves and whatnot. The people that are for STRs are, half of the township. The people that are against STRs are half of the township. So if somebody recuses themselves for being for it, that's muffling half of the township. And if somebody recuses themselves of being against it, that's, the people you represent need both sides of these people here. And so thank you all for standing up for whatever your side is. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Heidi Valmuth, 8388 Winnie Lane, Williamsburg, Michigan. Okay, you guys can all hate my guts because since 2015, I've been standing at this podium going, we can't enforce anything because we have nothing on the books. Fast forward to today, how much has changed in 10 years? Not much. We got a DG Market. Maybe another gas station, but that's about it, because they redid themselves. But we have to ask ourselves, do you want to protect yourselves or do you not? Because at the end of the day, be careful what you wish for, because you can't have some laws and no laws. You have to have something that 50-50 protects everyone. So we either have to come to an agreement or we will stay exactly like we are. We'll never have a downtown. We'll never grow. See, simple, humble status quo, but be careful. Might not have any police protection or fire department protection with it. Gotta be careful.
Excuse me, I would ask that the audience give the respect to each speaker to be able to state their opinion without being encumbered by background noise, please.
I'm Barb Dean. One of my addresses is 8778 Carnes Road. I have 3 other in our township. And I wasn't going to speak to this till I heard the question, the statement about recusing, and this is what I believe. I came from a community of 6,000 people. I was principal, my children went to school. I was my husband's boss. I went to the superintendent, said I should not write his evaluation. He said, why? Do you not have the integrity to look at him and to measure and to listen both sides? Well, of course I do. And I think we elected the board members, whether you did or not, we should give them the honor and the respect of being able to listen to both sides and voice their opinion and not have to recuse themselves. I'm not in favor of that.
Hi, I'm Al Keaton, 5296 Schofield Trail. And we passed a rule on the Planning Commission. It was a rule of necessity, and the courts have upheld it, that in a small community, if you do have a conflict, and if it keeps someone from getting a decision made because they took the people away that had a conflict, then that's not being fair to the community. So what the courts have said is if you elect the rule of necessity, then if you do have a conflict, you can state it, but you could still vote. So, and you can check that out. It's called the rule of necessity. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Prince. I'm from 633 Armstrong Road, Calcasta, Michigan. And I'd just like to basically make a statement for the benefit of the people here. It's that I believe that each and every one of you have a valid oath of office on file. And that oath of office requires you to uphold the U.S. Constitution and the state of Michigan Constitution. And the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, your job is to protect these people's rights to private property. We fought King George once over this and won. You cannot zone anything that you don't own. Anything township owns, township can zone. People have not given up their rights to private property. So with that said, I would be concerned if I was you, because if you are not protecting the people's rights, your office is null and void, you have no bond, and if they're damaged or injured, you're personally responsible. So that's all I have to say. Have a good evening.
Mike Jacobson, Skigamok Point Road. You all campaigned on having conservative values. So far, Jill is the only person in this board that has shown any. Also, you all took an oath to protect the Constitution. All government employees do. so that when an agency gets it wrong, every agency after them has the ability and obligation to correct it. Our Constitution guarantees us the right of being innocent until proven guilty. I can't find where this right is excluded for civil matters. Our community is highly desired by people moving into the area. The lifelong residents have always welcomed these people to our community with the hope that they leave behind where they came from. Just because they made more money in the big city where they came from than we did here on labor and tourist town wages doesn't give them more rights than us. All we have, we all have our station in life and all need each other because we all have different circumstances, abilities, and wages. We all have different lifestyles, and these lifestyles look different from yard to yard. We don't live in an HOA and don't want to. We pay our property taxes and want to live our dreams on our piece of paradise too. I would encourage all long-term and lifelong residents to speak to this board, tell a part of your story, and make them see you as an individual instead of the nuisance they see us as. 3 minutes each to speak our mind isn't much, so if you're long-winded as I am, you may want to say part of what you want during this public comment and the rest during the public hearing public comment. As for myself, my house was built in the 40s before zoning and is too close to the road for today's standards. I don't have a garage, a pole barn, or a workshop, so my driveway is my workshop because that's where the flat ground and the power are. With this civil infraction ordinance written the way it is, every time I work on something in my driveway, somebody can complain, resulting in the township giving me a hard time and possibly a fine. We don't want a heavy-handed local government, and this civil infraction ordinance would do just that. I've not heard of one board member here ever having a conversation with anyone they want to use this ordinance on to find out anything about them or their circumstances. And I'd like to thank the township. This is the biggest birthday party I ever had, but the cops are usually called at the end.
Are there any other general public comments?
Glenn Savage, 9833 Pineapple Lane. I have to apologize for my speaking because I got dementia. I was born in Whitewater Township 81 years ago. I've lived here just about my whole life. I've seen a lot of things come and go. I think a person should have the right to use their property within means for whatever they wish. And it's just like if you move in here from another area, you shouldn't be able to dictate the way your neighbors live just because you got a bigger house or you got more property. It's just, I don't like these conflicts, but when you get something as big as this, to where, like the gentleman said, it could involve lawsuits for you citizens and for me. I think something of that magnitude should go before the general public in a public vote. It's as simple as that.
Any other general comments?
This is more addressed to the audience.
We need you to state your name and address,
My name
please.
is Neil Shalagowski. I live at 10120 Amoswood Drive. And something I was made aware of today, because it seems that owning property doesn't entitle you to a whole lot. there's something, and I forgot my note, but there's a thing called the open field doctrine. And that allows people from the state, the DNR, anybody to come onto your property just to look around. They don't need a reason, but I want you to look into that because there's a state representative and he is proposing 2 bills right now, and they're trying to shut down that doctrine, which originally it was based or started because during the Depression and when moonshining was popular, they wanted to allow federal agents onto people's property. So look into the open field doctrine. It's one more thing to protect your land.
Excuse me, Kay, did you get the name of that?
No, I need his
Individual?
spelling, and the gentleman with the cowboy hat is Marlon.
Yeah, Glenn's. Okay, so, excuse me, the last person that made a comment, we need you to state your name, please, at the podium more, yes, more slowly so that we can record it properly.
Okay, my
Yes.
name is Neil Shelagowski. It's Shelagowski, just like it sounds, 10120 Amos Wood Drive.
Neil?
I got it.
We have that one. Okay, anybody else with a general public comment? Yeah, and if you could make sure you have that mic close enough to your mouth.
Mark Krennock, 9341 Fairview. What needs to be understood with regards to, I think, the interest and the enthusiasm and the emotional attachment is the fact that folks want to protect their property and what their right to use it. I want you to keep in mind, though, a couple of things that have happened, really primarily since 2015, 2017. You have the development of something called the short-term rental. It used to be by friends and family or people that you know, so you actually had a direct lineage and connection. So the idea of having an ordinance here that, quote, doesn't exist, but therefore bans and makes it unlawful to rent your property in a commercial basis. And that's in all zones, both residential, agricultural, and so on, okay? There are special circumstances which have been allowed, and that's within the master plan. The master plan is designed to protect all citizens. But the fact is, if you break the law and to ask for forgiveness so you can continue to do things just because you're breaking the law now, rather than looking at it in a lawful way to approach, you're just going to say, I'm going to break it, and I don't care about you, or you. I ask you all to think about a couple things. Grand Traverse County has lost 2,500 students in the last 5 years. Grand Traverse County, Leelanau, and Kalkaska and Antrim represent 4% of the population in the state of Michigan, but we have 38% of the short-term rentals that are within this area. In 2022 itself, over 8 months, short-term rentals itself brought in over $20 million. How many of the people here who have a short-term rental have shared that wealth with you? The tourists are going to come whether they have a short-term rental or whether they have something else. They're going to come anyways. This is just an excuse for single individuals to gain wealth in whatever ways. I understand the arguments behind it, but you have a number and a great percentage of folks that are coming in as LLCs and not on the property managers. That's very, very important to understand. I don't see any of these people sharing any of that wealth with any of us. In fact, I hear people going on vacations and doing other things and purchasing other stuff and going elsewhere. They're not putting back into the community. They'll talk about how they do servicing and so on and so forth on the property itself. I get that. I respect that. But don't tell me that you're doing it for the good of the community, because you're not. You're doing it for personal gain and wealth. And unless you put that wealth back into the community, it is not a community-based component. And it is not something that is covered by a right of property. Zoning was,
Okay,
thank you.
Mark, your time's
Zoning
up.
was determined to actually enforce and allow people to respect others. Thank you.
Where is that? Where is that? Excuse me, Jessica, just one moment. So some of you guys are having loud conversations that are, again, impeding the ability of us to hear as well as the rest of you to hear. If you would like to have a separate conversation, we would ask that you exit the building and come back when you're finished. Appreciate your help with that. Go ahead, Jessica.
5101 Brown Bear Lane, Jessica Mangus. I sound very different on the microphone, so my apologies if I zone out just a minute, because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say. But I do feel it is worth reminding everyone that there have been two different topics that were kind of had an arranged marriage this spring in the form of the civil infractions ordinance and the short-term rental issue. And that those are two different issues with very different potential outcomes in how they are handled. This is the public hearing about the civil infraction ordinance and the ramifications that that may end up playing out in our community, years later. And as for Traverse City, as for the wider area, from the perspective of a young person, I could never dream of owning a house on the lake. A lot of the short-term rentals, honestly, I guess, if they aren't here anymore, maybe I could buy one of them, but I'd need to take out like 3 loans, and I'm only one person, unfortunately. They're just out of my price range for now, but someday, hopefully, maybe if I could find a way to have one myself, then I could afford a house in the area and contribute to something like the Traverse City School District. But it's a very difficult, very expensive place to live at the moment, and I and a lot of my friends of my age have kind of had to make peace with that. It's part of growing up, and we can't really change it with people coming in from Chicago or Sacramento or New York. With that being said, as for the civil infractions ordinance itself, this seems to be about how we handle when you, break the law, when you violate zoning. That seems like it's a different discussion than the zoning itself. It's how is the township and what tools do they have to confront that issue and take care of it, to tell the person that they're doing something wrong and to potentially penalize it. And so I hope everyone keeps that in mind, because that means we could have very different regulations down the line that people can be penalized for in this way. Or if people are worried about the way that they're going to be penalized with the stuff we have now, is it that they're afraid of the way the penalty is going to be enforced? Or are they afraid of the zoning itself? Those are going to be, I think down the line, they're going to be two different issues. But this issue specifically here, it's tied to that intersection. And I just wanted to mention it since the civil infractions ordinance has been one thing, but the short-term rental ordinance has a lot more opinions flying around it. And I hope everyone can separate that in their mind, including the board. Personally, I think that both of the subjects that have been mentioned to potentially recuse themselves, I'm sure that you guys can separate out personal lives and this business end of the spectrum. From what I understand, both of you have been doing this a long time in different ways, and I'm sure as long as you keep the public in mind, you're going to do just
Jessica, we need that wrapped up. Thank you. All right, who else has a general public comment at this time? All right, then we are going to move on with our agenda at this point, and we're going to move into the public hearing. I have a couple things I want to say before we start the public comment. First of all, some of you may have received a mailer taped to your mailbox or inserted in some way. I want to clarify that that was not done by the township and that that is a federal offense to do such a thing. People are not to touch your mailbox. That is not a legal activity. So I just want everybody to be aware of that. Secondly, I want to make it clear that we may or may not make a decision tonight. I just want to make that clear. That'll all depend on public comment we receive and time available tonight. So with that, I need a motion to open the public hearing. So I will make that motion to open the public hearing. I need a second.
I'll second.
So a motion made by Slopsma, seconded by Aaron's. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we are opening the public hearing at 6:35 PM. As we have said previously, particularly if you're going to make a public comment, we would ask that you sign one of the attendance sheets in case we need to check that and clarify a name. You'll also be needing to follow the same rules to state your name. Please speak slowly so we can make sure we get that right, and your address. In terms of the public hearing, this was published in the newspaper on 9/11 in the Traverse City Record Eagle. The purpose of the public hearing is to take public comment on the civil infraction general ordinance that was in the packet. Next, I want to just recognize written comments that were received in advance of the meeting. We had comments from 6 different people: Burgle, Shively, Steelman, another Steelman, Mangus, Kavanaugh, and Pop. At this time, we will start receiving public comment, and as a reminder, there are those chairs so people can get ready if they will be the next speaker. The first person may step forward, and again, you are addressing the township board, not the audience. The audience is here to listen to you as well.
Good evening, board. Ron Pop, 6237 Elkview Drive. Thank you for providing this venue for us to speak tonight. The most important thing I would like the board to recall or remember from tonight is that this proposed ordinance is bad for the residents of Whitewater Township. Anyone that will tell you we don't have ordinance, we don't have a way to enforce what's currently on the books is wrong. They have been there since 1972. Use them. I've listened to a number of points of view over the past 12 years. My takeaway, above all else, is that residents are quite happy with the way things are, and they just want to be left alone. There are a few exceptions. They want a robust emergency services facility. We want less government, not more rules that need more government to administer. We want off the merry-go-round. The following words have been chosen on purpose. Protection from the pig pens that move in. To be clear, if you move in next to a pig pen, you have no right to protection. Pig pen, of course, can relate to junk, commercial business in a residential area, many different things. They also want buffer zones. Although they may not know what they are, they want a definite separation between commercial and residential. At no point should commercial be in a residential district. They want a township-sponsored cleanup day. And an ever-growing need for police officers. Not sure why that is. The proposed ordinance you're discussing here tonight does not clear the bar. and will be ineffective on any of the significant zoning issues facing the township today. Terminate your attorney. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
I'm Al Keaton, 5296 Schofield Trail. And I just want to remind everybody that this is similar to the Peninsula case, which if you read through that, and I sent everybody on the board a copy of that and the Planning Commission, and what the judge of the U.S. District Court said is basically they violated the constitutional rights. The original was $128 million for the suit, and the judge dropped it down, I think, around 51 million. Well, when you read that case, and I hope you have because I sent it to you, when you read that, when you look at what he picked out as violating the U.S. Constitution, the people's rights to their property, this is when you look at this is going to fit very similar. So if we pass this through, we're going to be in the same place, but we don't have a lighthouse to sell like they're going to have to do in Peninsula. The only thing we have is the township park. So this needs to go back to the drawing board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mickey Dean, 4020 Farrell Road, Williamsburg. Board, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this. I'd like to go right to specifics on the proposed civil infraction ordinance. My first specific would be in the definitions section. Everything is defined except what a municipal civil infraction is. Okay, the action's there, the notice is there. There's no definition of what a municipal civil infraction is. So I'd like to see that addressed. The state's got a pretty good summary of what they think it is, but I think it should be stated right in our ordinance if we're gonna do it. My second concern is that the commencement of this entire action, if you wanna call that, is notice to appear. There is no, in our current process, you're at least notified that you're considered to be in violation. But the action commencement, as I read it, is notice to appear in district court or show up at the township. That's your two options. I think there ought to be a notice of violation or something that isn't enforceable. There's no fine associated with it. If you can address the issue, no harm, no foul, be a good neighbor, and off you go. So I would like to see the first step in this process, a notice that isn't a notice to appear in district court for something that you might not even be aware that you're violating. My last specific is on the fee schedule, which is the one that really freaks me out. And I'm gonna go at the risk of public math as I go through this. But if you look at the fee schedule and then look at the notes that go with it, the one that gets you is every day can be considered a subsequent offense. So the rapid growth from the first fine to the $500 a day fine could happen on day 4. Because if you're in violation on the first 3 and violation on the day 4, that's up to $500. And from there in perpetuity. And if you want to do that math, that is $15,000 a month and $180,000 a year. That's what the legal language says that you're allowed to whack the citizenry with, which is annually 5 times the annual salary of a Grand Traverse County resident. 5 times the annual salary per year, and that's what this says you can hit our citizenry with for violations. I think that language needs to be tweaked substantially. As far as the application of this, and this is a little bit more jointly to the whole room, is I want to point out some other words that are not in our ordinance. We all know about the rental being missed. The one confusing part with that is I've asked the zoning administrator in our offices whether a long-term rental is allowed, and the answer was yes. This was 4 months ago at a PC meeting. So you can long-term rent, that's not in the ordinance, but you can't short-term rent, which isn't in the ordinance. Confusing. I want to point out some others where this civil infraction ordinance may come into play. Garden, not specified in the ordinance, and I will fess up to being guilty. Vegetable garden. How about a dock or a hoist for our lakefront owners?
Okay, Mickey.
Not specified. Thank you very much for your time.
Randy Steelman, 7315 Crisp Road. That's good stuff there. I didn't know so many people knew about Old Mission Peninsula. I happen to be a builder and I work there occasionally, less occasionally of late. It has gotten to be the most difficult township that I have ever worked in to try to get a zoning permit. It is ridiculous. In fact, I'm to the point where if somebody wants me to work there, they have to get that permit and then we'll talk, because I'm not going to waste my time with those people. I think that this civil infraction thing is pushing us in that same direction, or maybe even worse. It's like we go from, we're the Wild West over here, and a lot of us kind of like that, or some of us like that. And then now we're going to be the strictest township that I've ever seen in my life. So I want to say I am against this ordinance entirely. We currently have a procedure on how to handle these kinds of things, and the procedure we currently have is tedious and difficult, as it should be, and it's been working fine for many years. I've said this before, and I'm going to have to say it again, but it should be very difficult for the government or neighbors to inflict their will upon others' freedoms and rights as citizens and landowners. It should not be easy. It should not be quick. This civil infraction tries to make short work of our freedoms and rights, and it will cause more problems than it will fix. When people start treating each other differently because of this new power imbalance, I ask that you please not adopt this complicated ordinance, as our old rural country character that most of us love stands in the balance. Thank you.
Nancy Moodhart, 7811 Cook Road. I just want to support the previous speakers, let you know that I agree with them, and others should do that too if they agree.
Dick Bukowski, 10304 Elk Lake Trail. First of all, I'd like to take the board collectively and individually back to a year ago when you were campaigning. And you all said that you would, what your promises were, and you convinced enough citizens to vote you in, that you would work with the people and for the people of Whitewater Township. That being said, you are now proposing a new civil infraction ordinance, ordinance number 2025, which gives each of you, as well as others, the right to enforce an infraction notice or citation on a citizen to enforce the provisions of the township ordinances. It appears as written to replace the existing code enforcement policy and procedures manual that was effective 1/2/2012. But with less rights for the citizen and more rights for the board, and given the other people that would be involved. Let me take you on a hypothetical example of what I'm saying here. Let's take Joe Smo. He's a Whitewater Township citizen who's married with 2 children. Both Joe and his wife work long hours to make ends meet, and they happily drive their children to their social and educational appointments. It just so happens some of you drive by Joe's place on your way to work. One day, one of you notice a swing set you think that looks in visual disrepair, and it's showing rusty spots, so you issue Joe a municipal civil infraction notice to paint his rusty swing set It's Joe's first violation. So first violation in 3 years. So he thinks the fine will be $75 until he paints his swing set. Now I take you to paragraph D on page 7 of the new ordinance, separate ordinances, and I quote, "Separate offenses, each day on which a violation continues constitutes a separate offense and shall be subject to the penalties appropriate therein, even without the township issuing another citation for each day that the violation continues to exist, and shall not preclude the township from seeking civil fines for each day that that exists." Now, the fines have changed for Joe Smo. Day 2, he gets his second notice in 3 years, fine $250. Day 3, Joe gets his third notice in 3 years, fined $500. Day 4 through 7, Joe gets 4 through 7 notices in 3 years at $500 a day. So on the 7th day, Joe paints his swing sets, satisfies the notice, but his fine for that notice on the 7th day is a total of $2,825. I guess where I'm coming from with this is, do you think Joe Smo thinks you're working for him and with him? Do the people in this room feel that you're working for them and with them with this kind of language?
So,
and these
sir,
kind
we
of
need you
fines?
to wrap up your comments at this point, please.
Then I guess I can leave it right there. I think I've made my point. I would say one more thing, and that is if you understood these fines this way and you vote for this ordinance, then you are breaking your campaign finance promises to this group. Thank you.
Denver Baker, 5950 Cook Road, Williamsburg. How he stated at the end there about how you vote, I'd like to state that we all do live in a democracy. We all vote. You guys were voted in to represent the people. And right now, I don't think you're representing the people. And I don't understand why we aren't allowed to have any opinion besides just a public comment at a little mic in a stupid gymnasium. We should be able to all state our opinion on this. I am opposed to this ordinance. But why are we not allowed to vote on it? Why do we not get to have any sort of statement besides a public comment versus stating something at an actual vote? The small amount of you versus the large amount of people here, it outweighs by endless measure. And I think it really needs to be stated that it should be voted upon, and I am completely opposed to this. Have a great night.
Does anybody else want to make a public comment?
Renee Savage, 9833 Pine Hill Lane, and I also have the commercial property at 8995 M72 East. We have to have laws, we have to have rules, because we're a civilized nation. But how those are enforced should represent the people. And I do agree that this is too big and too important a decision that the people don't get to say which way it should go. Thank you.
Jim Gaskin, 8696 Church Street, Williamsburg. I agree. I think this should come to a vote by the people. I don't like the way it's written. I don't like what it says. And if it's a matter of my confusion, then I think the board needs to take the first step and write up step 1, this is what it means. Step 2, this is what it means. Dumb it down for people like me. I don't mind. But the way I hear it and the way I see it right now, all you're looking at is a revenue generating source. I think it's wrong. And I don't think, nothing against any one of you, but I don't think that you should have the right to make the decision about my property or someone else's. Personally, unless it is a health hazard, I don't care what my neighbor has in their yard. Not my business. Thank you.
Who else would like to step forward?
Okay, I'm Barb Dean, 8778 Carnes Road, plus 3 other addresses. Okay, so this civil infraction thing, the first time I read it, I said, oh, surely I'm missing some pages. I view it as written by an attorney. Believe me, I've worked with a number of attorneys from school shootings on, and it's made to make money for attorneys, and it is punitive, it's vindictive, it creates neighbors who can't even hardly speak to each other. It's confusing. I've heard your board sit and say, I don't even know the flow chart or how it works. That's why you tabled it. I don't know why you can't create a flow chart, step 1, step 2. And why doesn't it start at this very first level of neighbors talking to neighbors? Honest to Pete, why can't you record that? I will give an example without a name. I went to my neighbor and said, okay, this is confusing. You don't need to act right away, but just give me a call back. It was settled in 1 week. When he got the chance to call me back, it was done. I didn't need to file a civil infraction. I didn't need to have the township collect money. I think you need to go over and say, here's the problem. That's the same with my neighbor just last night. She came over. She said, we've got this going on. I said, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. She said, I just wanted you to know so you weren't confused. Why are we creating a vindictive thing where somebody files and you all of a sudden have to hire an attorney? I mean, your first step is you're gonna, even at the lowest level, you have to appear in court. I'm not going to court without an attorney. I don't care what level it is, okay? So I think that you should maybe go back to an ROS committee. I'm on the ROS for short-term rentals. I found amazing things in other communities that have set up that are already in place, even this year starting. Why not start there and look what communities of our side are doing for civil infractions also? Okay. Thank you.
Brenda Baker, 5982 Cook Road. I also just wanted to say that I'm in favor and agree with these previous speakers that are not in favor of this complicated civil infraction. I think it's way out of line. We moved to Whitewater Township and it was a breath of fresh air from Traverse City and the multiple HOAs. I think it's opening a huge can of worms if you pass this, and that we should definitely have a vote. There are a lot of people here, but I can guarantee you that there are a lot of people that are afraid to speak up in fear that they'll be targeted in the future. Thanks.
I'm Annette Neske, 7337 Skigmog Point Road. I am totally opposed to this ordinance.
Hang on just a minute. Can you say your name more slowly and spell it, please?
Annette Neske, Nesky, 7337 Skigmog Point Road.
Thank you.
I feel by paying our property taxes, we should be able to do whatever we want with our property. We shouldn't be told what we can or cannot do with our own property. We spend a lot of money in this township. There's 5 generations of my family that has lived on Skigmog Point Road alone. And every one of us has paid our taxes and had to listen to what other people from other communities coming in here, wanted to turn this rural community into. Okay? If this ordinance passes and we have something to do like on our that you don't like on our property, we will be automatically fined. If we don't admit guilt and pay your fine, then we go to court. Once we go to court, not only do we have to pay for our own attorney, we have to pay for the township's attorney as well. This is a free country where we are innocent until proven guilty by a jury of our peers. You are trying to take those rights away and prosecute us without a fair trial. Basically, with this new ordinance, you're asking neighbors to call out their neighbors because they don't like the looks of their property. One gentleman said, if you moved in next door to a junkyard, you know what you moved into. If you moved down the end of a Skigmog Point Road where it's a dead-end road, you went by this house to buy your house. You know what you're moving into, okay? Basically, this form or your ordinance is asking neighbors to call out their neighbors because they don't like the looks of their property. Instead of being neighborly and trying to solve their concerns face to face. You know, back in the old day, that's the way they used to do it. Instead of going, knocking on somebody's door saying, I don't like him. This ordinance is not bringing the community together, it is dividing our community. I'm not sure who decided that the 5 of you could be judge, jury, and hangman when it comes to our own property. Last time I knew, you worked for the people of this township, and we expect you to protect our rights, not harass us.
Rachel Steelman, Crisp Road. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciated your decision on May 8th to reevaluate this ordinance after hearing resident feedback. Your willingness to task Randy and Wendy with exploring better options was a promising step toward ensuring our township's policies reflect our community's values of fairness, clarity, and unity. However, I was disappointed to see that the only change proposed was a minor addition addressing enforcement abuse, which doesn't fully address the concerns raised. This ordinance, as written, lacks an internal appeal process, which I believe is essential. At the September 11th Township Board meeting, you adopted a code of ethics policy and agreed an appeal process was necessary for internal matters. If an appeal process is appropriate for the board, shouldn't it also be included in a township-wide enforcement policy to protect residents? Residents are concerned about the ordinance's complexity and potential for misapplication. For example, vague enforcement could unfairly target minor issues like noisy grandchildren visiting based on subjective complaints. While investigations and signed complaints are intended as safeguards, we've seen instances where these steps haven't been consistently followed already. This suggests the ordinance needs stronger protections to ensure fairness. I respectfully urge the board to revisit this ordinance, thoroughly review the valuable feedback provided tonight, and consider our township's history and needs. A well-crafted ordinance should foster community cohesion and trust. Please take the time to get this right for all of us. Thank you.
Dan Brewer, 9043 Wheeler Oaks Drive, again. We have been the target of our neighbors for our businesses that we run on our property. One of those neighbors is a member on your board, and that was before he was a member on this board, and here he is now with more power than what he had before. And now he's almost like empowered. So it's like, I don't get it. It's like you guys ran as Republicans, which I have always kind of felt like you were more freedom and liberty. And I think that this is the furthest thing from freedom and liberty. And I think it's a shame. It's disgraceful, really. And anyhow, you send a law enforcement officer onto my property, and he'll be finding himself escorted off my property. And I don't say that lightly. I mean it. I don't put up with the bullshit. Thank you.
Denver Baker, 5950 Cook Road. This will be the last time I come up. As of right now, looking at the room and addressing the room, it appears the majority states no to this, correct? If there were people in favor of this, and if people were willing to fight for this, saying we do not want, or we want this, it's gotta be here. I'm not seeing anybody speaking up for it. And the people that are here that are in the community that do not want it, which make up the majority right now, the people that are willing to actually come here and speak, we don't want it. That's how it is.
Who else would like to step forward and speak?
Mike Jacobson, Muskegumug Point Road. From my point of view, and many people I've talked to, we don't want this ordinance at all because it gives too much power to local government and will allow them to become heavy-handed. The way enforcement has always been keeps that from happening. When an official shows up at your door pointing out the zoning ordinance you are in violation of, generally, this fixes the problem. When it doesn't, the township takes you to court. When the township loses in court, as they have, they don't like it. And that's why they want to be able to declare you guilty without having to go to court. Apparently, the board has already decided to enact this ordinance before they even hear what the public has to say. The Declaration of Independence states that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everyone's vision of happiness is different. As a whole, the citizens of Whitewater Township haven't signed an HOA agreement. Therefore, no one has the right to tell anyone what their vision has to look like. We all bought our property, we all pay our property taxes, we all have the right to live our lives as we see fit on our own property, as long as we're not harming anyone else. Seeing something you don't like in someone else's property doesn't hurt anyone. Look around this room. This is a lot better representation of our community than we had at the master plan open houses and the minority group that the board represents. You are obligated and expected to represent all of us, not just the people you want to. If you enact this as is, we won't have a special township anymore. We will have a township that is heavy-handed and overbearing, just like the rest of Grand Traverse County. Our community is special because we still have individual property owner rights, which I believe the master plan says we should protect. That being said, if you enact this ordinance, changes that need to be made are, it needs to be easier to read and understand. The infringement of our constitutional rights needs to be eliminated. People making complaints need to be identified to the person they are complaining about. When defending yourself in court, you only pay for your own lawyer. The ordinance you are accused of violating needs to be clearly stated. An independent review panel comprised of citizens from many different walks of life needs to be established. No per-day fines.
Mike, you need to wrap things up, please.
One more sentence. When complaints are made, the first step should be to tell the complainer to talk to their neighbor. Most people respond to the personal approach much better than the demand, and this would help neighbors understand each other.
Hello, my name's Gary Hanna. I live at 5928 Cook Road. Could I see a raise of hand of how many of you are lifelong residents here from the board? Exactly. You moved here because you didn't like it where you were. This was your idea of paradise, and now you're trying to change it. In the 1990s, there was a man on the board named Thad Ketchum. You can look it up. He was a township supervisor, and everything he tried to do was like where he came from, East Lansing. Well, if you don't want it like where you came from, why are you trying to make it that way? Thank you.
Who else would like to make a public comment?
Mark Williams from Williamsburg. I'd like to invite the people that have one of these papers that was handed out to look at the picture. I got there by going 5 pages from the back, but it's the,
Mark, can you tilt that microphone so it's closer to your mouth? Because you're looking down, it's hard to hear.
so there's a picture, it says, is this Harold's infraction? But anyway, it says, it's 5 pages from the back. There's a picture of a car. Would people look at that? Can anybody there tell me what kind of car that is? It looks to me like a 55 Chrysler. If it's a 55 Chrysler, that front bumper's worth $500. The taillights are worth $750 a piece. That car is worth the same as 10 Honeycrisp trees. But Honeycrisp trees, just another business. I know of a place right here in Whitewater Township. There's a vehicle setting. I know it's been sitting there for over 50 years. It's a really rare piece. That vehicle is worth 40 acres of Honeycrisp trees. So my point is, those are just dollars. And it's in the eye of the beholder as to if it's an infraction or not. I'm not a very eloquent speaker. I'm busy on Tuesday morning. I don't listen to words to the wise on TCM. But summing it all up, and there's been a lot of eloquent speakers here. I'm not one of them. But my sermon in a sentence comes down to one word. This is all about freedom. Thank you.
Can you hear me? My name is Greg Haugen. I live at 5661 Williamsburg Road. I'm probably in a fraction of a lot of things they're talking about on this list. But if you drive by, it's always clean, it's mowed around, about 3 years ago, I fell through the roof, which caused me to have to relocate my business back home because I couldn't work and support everything. So that's why there's some stuff in the yard due to business and everything. So I am not in favor of this because you never know what life brings you. And, if you have to work out of your house for a little bit to get back on your feet, which I'm starting to get there right now. It took 3 years to at least be able to put an 8-hour day in. But yeah, I just feel like this should be to a vote, and, if it's not harming anybody, what does it matter, if it's really bugging you that much, go say, hey, can I help you clean it up or whatever, kind of talk to your neighbor. I like both my neighbors. One, they just moved back in because one died recently and they moved out, and they had some people renting it to help pay bills, I'm sure, and then they moved back in once they got resettled. So, and there's a junk car in their driveway. I wanted to buy it from them, but they don't have the title for it. So it doesn't do me any good without the title. I don't mind looking at it. It's another truck. They can't do anything with it either because they don't have the title for it. And she is elderly now. He was elderly as well. So, it's not like they're going to run down to the code, or not the code office, sorry, I'm a builder, so I constantly go there. But to the township or wherever and get the title for it, you know? So everybody's got their own story, and, you know, just listen to people. Nowadays, got social media and everything everywhere, and nobody seems to take a second to, you know, ask somebody about something, you know? You stop over to my house, I'll talk to you for as long as you want. I don't care, you know? I help out people when I can. So yeah, you know, just, I feel like, it should be up to more than, you know, just a couple people. So, that's all I got. I wasn't planning on speaking, so, all right, thank you.
Hi, I'm Whitney Braden, 7176 Bunker Hill Road. Grew up on that road, lived there for 36 years, and I plan to die on that road in this township. I'm lucky my father built my house next to my grandmother's farmhouse, and to most people, there was a lot of junk. And my grandfather sat here 40 years ago dealing with the same ordinances of junk. But what is junk to most people was his livelihood. It looked like an old broken down bus, but like he said, that motor was worth a lot. And what my old vehicle that's sitting behind our pole barn, hidden, I have hit 4 deer because I live on a dirt road, and I've taken a headlight out of that one and put it in my new van. A headlight out of that one, put it in a new van. My radiator busted out. I had an old junk truck or van, was able to put a new radiator in my van, all for free because of this junk car, which is junk to most people, but I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom to my child, so I didn't have an income. So I couldn't go out and pay a mechanic to fix it. So that junk van that was given to me afforded me that time with my son. So it's hard when you look at the zoning ordinance issued back in 2005, and it's up to interpretation to whom believes it's a blight on your vision. It feels wrong that somebody can make a choice of what is worth something to somebody else. And I don't know if this is a chance where we can ask a question, but why wouldn't we let the voters choose? Is there an answer to that? Why would you want all that heat when you could let the people you serve make that decision for you? Why don't we have it as a vote? Can anybody answer that question?
Since this has come up several times, I will answer that question. So when people can and can't vote is part of the specific Michigan statute. So let's use the zoning ordinance as an example because it has the most detailed requirements of what you can and cannot do with your property in the township. By the way, junk or blight is not part of the zoning ordinance. Okay. It's separate, so I'll talk about that in a minute. So for example, if there is ever a change to the zoning ordinance, and the original zoning ordinance went in the 70s, so we've had it for about 50 years. If there's ever a change to the zoning ordinance, small or big, that goes through the Planning Commission. They make a recommendation to the board. The board agrees to make the change or not make the change. And then there is a provision within the statute that allows within a certain time frame for the people to submit petitions to take it to a vote. Okay? Now, recently in the township, a few years ago, with the marijuana situation, in the statute around marijuana in the state, you were allowed to take that to a vote of the people to either allow it or prohibit it. Okay, so that's in the statute. The case that you are asking about, and several people have cited regarding junk or blight, that is a general ordinance, and there is not a provision for the people to take that to a vote, okay? So that is the answer to that. Like it or not, it's the law. I would also like to clarify at this point regarding this municipal civil infraction. This is in a similar situation where there is not a provision within the statute to take it to a vote. Your opinion does matter to us, but there is not a way for you to petition to put it on the ballot. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for answering.
I don't know if I need to state my name again. Neil Shuligowski. Whenever I want to get to the bottom of a story, I've always been taught to follow the money. Okay? Now, if this plan were to pass, how aggressively are you planning on going after all the residents? Are you going to send drones over all our yards? What personal interest do you have in making this money? Because it's not going to serve our township. The fines would go to what? The state? The township or the county? Where would these fines go to?
My understanding is the fines stay at the township.
Really? Oh, that's even more interesting. So the township would take all the fines from all of us who have violated this, whatever you call it, but this ordinance. I don't know. I really question the whole money issue behind it because money is generally the driving factor.
You're not done with me yet. Jim Gaskin, 8696 Church Street, Williamsburg. Okay, you can't take it to a vote. I got it. I understand. So when are you going to determine a committee of citizens to go over this ordinance, put real-time input into it from the citizens, and carry it to that next level? Thank you.
Okay, who else has a public comment?
Howdy, my name is Dave Williams, 11552 Watson Road. There was a speaker earlier that said something about how things haven't changed in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. The ordinance has been in place since 72. That's over 50 years. Nothing's changed. Thank God for that. Thank Allah. Thank your lucky stars. Most importantly, thank your neighbors. We have all chose to live here because it is what it is. This is a beautiful place. We don't want that change. At the end of the day, we all have to go home to our own personal paradises. Maybe you guys should go home tonight, maybe talk to one of these. There's hundreds of people here, all with their own personal paradises. They'd probably share it with you. Sit and reflect upon why you moved here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Nagy, 7723 Cram Road. I don't have a prepared statement to make, but I do want to question the abilities of any and all board members to be fair and impartial and to carry out the requirements needed to cite somebody for an infraction. I don't think that any of you have been anointed to do that. And from what I've read, you will choose among yourselves the person to enforce and initiate the action. I believe that a civil infraction ordinance is necessary, but the one that you've proposed is entirely too harsh and has too many financial penalties and is written entirely in the favor of the person citing the infraction. Now, I've read the Acme Township CIO, and I find it to be much less harsh, and I find it to have been a model for the one that you have proposed. You need to back off on it, take another look at it, listen to the people that are here if you indeed want to continue your tenure after your term is up, because this group of people will have you gone. And I'm sure you would like to stay. I'm sure you'd like to stay and do the best for our community. That is something that I would hope that you would all do. But I know that at least 4 of you all ran on the same placard. Your signs were one after the other, and it was intended to drive out the current government that we had. It upset me to the point where I didn't vote for any of you, and I probably never would based upon what I'm hearing from you today. If this is the best you can do, then you will be gone before long. All right, so pay attention to this group of people and make the right decision. Back off, take another look, and be fair. Also, the ordinances that you intend to enforce, has anybody reviewed them? Or are they just going to be arbitrarily enforced as you as a board see it, or want to see it, or want to have it your way, okay? So, again, take another good, long, hard look at what you're doing. Thank you.
All right, who else do we have that would like to make a comment?
Kim Angus, 5101 Brown Bear Lane. Statements come up many times. Right now, we have no way to enforce our ordinances. They haven't bothered to do it because we have no way to enforce. Yes, we do. It's not a bald-faced lie, but it's a blatant mistruth. We have the same system we've always had. It is, a civil infractions ordinance is, no question, it's more efficient, it's easier, it's streamlined. It's a good source of revenue, according to our attorney, but it's not better. It's less protective. It reduces our constitutional freedoms, and it moves power from the people to the board. Those are not good things. The ordinance that you have proposed right now, I would never support a civil infractions ordinance. But if we were going to have one, I would be less opposed to one that didn't have these attributes. It uses hearsay as evidence. It has no citizen review panel. In fact, it has no board review panel. Once a ticket is issued by whoever's allowed to issue it, you're guilty. You're guilty unless you can prove that you're innocent, because by having a civil infractions ordinance, you change the law. You become guilty until proven innocent. This ordinance also doesn't require that you cite what statute was broken by the individual. You can cite, I saw a car. You're not telling me where in the ordinance or what ordinance says that that is illegal. This ordinance will be abused. There is no question. How badly it will be abused is the only issue. 15 years on the Planning Commission, for those of you that don't recognize me. The one predominant thing that we always heard, didn't matter what question we asked, what do you want to see? We want to see what we have. We found it. We're not looking anymore. We love what we have here. We don't want to give it up. That was the answer to every question. I've heard comments that we're the only township that doesn't have a civil infractions ordinance. You know what? If we're the only township that respects the Constitution, I'm okay with that. That's a good thing. And the point has been brought up about over and over again. When can we vote? Why can't we vote? Why aren't we voting? I'm going to ask a different question. Show me the survey that you have of these residents that tells you that any percentage of them wants this ordinance. It's true, I understand the structure of governance enough to understand that you can't just put it on the ballot like we'd all like to see. But there is no provision that prohibits you from going to the public and saying, do you want this? Because the answer is no.
To wrap it up, please.
I can figure that out, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you. And don't cram us down to 3 minutes when we prepared for 5 if you don't want that to happen over and over and over again. Thank you.
Al Keaton, Schofield Trail. Apparently we can't put this to a vote, but what we can do is repeal it with the next board. So if it comes to that, if it does get shoved down our throat, then we can just repeal it, and I'm sure we can do that. We can repeal ordinances.
Glenn France, 633 Armstrong Road, Kalkaska, Michigan. I just have one quick question. When was there a vote of the people to give up their rights and give them to you guys to dictate to them? I've looked in the past and I can find no incorporation attempt at all. Unless you incorporate with the will of the people, you have no authority over the private. None whatsoever. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to make a public comment?
Howdy Valmies, 8388 Winnie Lane. Ladies and gentlemen, I really wish you had read this, but considering that I've read it several times, I'm starting to wonder if any of you read it. You owe it to yourself to read it. Greater good, that's all of us. When something happens, we all pull together. That's what the greater good is. Somebody goes down, you go down with them and you start your ABCs. You start the CPR. Unless you look across the room and say, I'm too close, somebody else take over. A responder follows laws. We have to. They save lives. Not following laws can kill people too. Lying about response times can kill people too. Rules are there for everybody to be safe. You might not like them, but sometimes we have to like them because we work for the greater good. I would like the board to, you did kind of good on this. It's got attorney all over it, and I'm not a fan of our attorneys. It's not easy to read, and I read it 7 times, so that tells you it's not easy to read. But what you're not doing here tonight is defining. We have to define why our forefathers put us in a zoning community, probably to protect us from ourselves. They probably knew what we were gonna destroy. Our water's beautiful. It's getting polluted. If we don't start following the laws or have some rules, it'll continue to be polluted. So sometimes we might not like the rules, but maybe we should give this board a chance to work with us to have the rules we can all live by. Thank you. I'll address anyone, anytime.
All right, anybody else have a public comment? Okay, thank you.
I'm still Mark Williams, and I was sitting there thinking about what I said last time I was up here, and I may have left something out. I complimented the other speakers and their eloquent speaking, and I said I was not one of them. I meant I'm not an eloquent speaker. But I hear, I believe 100% of the people who spoke here tonight have been opposed to the ordinance, and I am one of them. Thank you.
I would like to clarify one thing is we do have people on Zoom that also need to make a public comment. One public comment here. I appreciate all the comments, but one shot here to give us your comments. So does anybody that has not spoken yet during the public hearing portion have a comment to make?
Jessica Mangus, 5101 Brown Bear Lane. The specific statement I wanted to cite, at risk of potentially offending people, which I hope it wouldn't, it's just good advice in my opinion, is the phrase, love your neighbor as yourself. In the Bible, it is cited as equal as a statute to follow for personal betterment, to establish peace, along with loving God. And that's a separate matter, that's religion. But at the same time, I think there is something to that, and I think it has a redemptive sort of power that can help in this entire situation. I don't personally think that this board is necessarily going anywhere, at the very least for its term, and I don't think that you guys say you see that the people don't want this. For whatever reason you came to the conclusion, you walked into this, that you did. You can change your mind, and I think all of you have the capacity to do very well for the rest of your term in serving this community, as long as the community is first. Stuff like follow the money, thinking about the wide spectrum of things. Traverse City is a very interesting town these days. East Bay is where I initially grew up, and East Bay used to be a farming community, honestly very comparable to here, except for the part where then all of those farms couldn't make it, and when the family passed away, there was no one to take them over, and instead it went to people somewhere out in Chicago and office buildings that bought it basically like a stock option and put in massive quarter-mile thick apartment buildings. Now, I don't believe there's anything currently in zoning ordinance that says anything about those, but I'm sure that if you have that many lawyers, you probably could pay your way through a civil infractions ordinance, and you'd have people for that to make sure every duck is in the row, but that doesn't mean that it would keep any of the character that I think you guys are trying to preserve. It's other stuff like the question of blight and the ways that people make money and the way that it shows up in their house. Your job does come with you to some degree. If you park your truck and it has an advertisement in the front or on the door, technically speaking, that merges your life and your work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are advertising. It's just your truck. You gotta park it somewhere. You're not gonna cover it up with a tarp when you get home. And it would be ridiculous, I think, to go to like the farmers and say, those apple trees, we don't really like them. You should really take them. They're kind of dead. We're gonna fine you X amount about it. And I say that because I have friends that are from the community of lifelong farmers around here, and that problem hasn't come up for them, but it may in the future. Oh, right, buzzer. But I think that I'm very thankful for your time either way.
Thank you, Jessica.
Mark Rennock, 9341 Fairview. I actually am in favor of civil infraction, regardless of how that's received or not. But the reason for the existence of something like that is to allow those who break the law to be responsible in a way and be penalized. Rather than taking them into a criminal court, the civil infraction takes that away from a criminal court, which actually is more problematic than the civil infraction component would be. I understand the argument of being proven guilty before innocence, but that's where the idea and the concept of when you develop a civil infraction, you make sure that those who are making the accusations have the appropriate proof to prove this, not just a blatant saying, I'm going to report this, but it's really because they don't like their neighbor. But that gets also to the root of the problem. Have you talked to the neighbor? That's been brought up multiple times here. And so the idea of the civil infraction is actually another way to obviate that lack of communication between the neighbors. Why is there a lack of communication between the neighbors? It's because you no longer know them. Most of the people here have been here a long time. I've been here a long time, not lifelong, but for 26 years. And the thing is, I do know my neighbors, and I do watch out for my neighbors. And if somebody strange comes by, I will confront them. And that's the appropriate thing to do, and that's what neighbors do. So in the same way here, civil infractions allows you to overcome the lack of familiarity that we've come to enjoy. My involvement in getting together with regards to our township board and planning commission was because I was losing that familiarity with folks who were doing things that were not allowed under our ordinances. In other words, they were breaking the law. And I wanted to protect that which attracted me to be within this community, just as you do. I don't have any different desires or wants other than what you have. But the fact is if you had a turning door every day next to your particular property, next to your house, with somebody brand new all the time, and you don't have a way to actually approach that to put a stop to it, or at least to try and resolve that particular problem, what do you do? If you have something that's different as an alternative with regards to civil infraction, and there have been a couple suggestions that I think are valid to add in or to consider with the civil infraction component, then pursue that. But just to come out and condemn everything and throw the baby without the bathwater is no way to actually approach this in a reasonable and appropriate sense. Okay, here's the other, well, everybody has their own agenda and bias, don't they? All right, and that's the
time's
issue.
up on that, Mark. Thank
But
you.
that's, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else here that would like to make a comment that has not already? Okay, then we're going to move on to those that are on Zoom. Matt?
All right, I'm going to queue folks up on Zoom. So if you'd like to make public comment on Zoom, raise your hand. The first person we have with a raised hand is, I'm unmuting you now. It's Brian, labeled as Brian. Please introduce yourself and you can begin speaking now.
Good evening. My name is Brian Kelly. I'm an Acme Township resident. I don't have any skin in the game here, not living in Whitewater, but I just wanted to point some things out about how the Acme Township Civil Infraction Ordinance has worked out in our community. It was passed back in 2008. It is 6 pages long. I see the Whitewater Ordinance is 8 pages, and they are very, very similar. Here in Acme, the township staff works for months, and in some cases years, trying to get a resolution before issuing a citation. The Acme budget in 2023 and 2024 shows that $847 were collected on fees. And I'm quite certain that the majority of those fees were people not paying for a boat launch. So that is an example of why we would have a civil infraction ordinance. You go launch your boat, you don't pay the fee, you get a ticket, and you have to go to court. In the meeting packet for your meeting tonight, there's a flow chart of the process, and it's basically verbal warnings, warning letters, then an infraction notice, not a citation, an infraction notice, And if then that is ignored, that can escalate into a civil infraction citation. And that would entail an informal hearing with no lawyers, very much like a traffic ticket. And you can also, if you want, request a formal hearing and have a lawyer present, much like a traffic citation. A little story here from Acme. We've been hearing at our board meetings for the better part of a year now about a homeowner in a very, very nice subdivision who decided they no longer wanted to use Cherryland Electric. They put a generator in their backyard, and it's about, I understand, 20 feet from their neighbor's deck. And this generator is run most of the time. The neighbor says for 2 summers, they have not been able to use their deck. It's been a nightmare for them. Countless neighbors have appeared before our township board and complained about this. And after countless months of efforts, there have been many citations that have been ignored, and it's now in court. So, I agree, the idea we should be able to do what we want on our property, but we should also be able to enjoy our property. And I think the township and the community does need a remedy when situations like this generator arise. Anyway, over at Acme, I just wish you all good luck sorting this out. Thank you.
Okay, Matt, by the way, I just want to clarify, I think some people were concerned. We have an IT professional back there that is administering Zoom for us. He was not speaking. That was Brian Kelly from Acme Township speaking through Zoom. He is a member of the public and has the right to speak, just like all of you may do so as well. I'm going to make a motion to take a 10-minute break in case anybody needs to use the restroom. Do I have a second on that? Thank you. Okay, so motion made by Slopsma, seconded by Kester, and we will reconvene at 7, I'm sorry. All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we will reconvene at about 2 minutes before 8. Thank you. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. We're going to get restarted. So Matt, if you can queue up the next Zoom participant that has a comment.
All right. It looks like the next Zoom participant is labeled as Sue. Sue, I'm going to give you permission to speak in just a moment, or unmute you. And then anyone else who would like to make public comment on Zoom, just use the hand raise feature. You may have to tap on your screen to make the hand raise feature show.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, okay. My name is Sue Melnick. I live at 9304 Wheeler Oaks Drive in Williamsburg. I want to say before I get started that, again, these are my comments and not necessarily those of my husband. I just want to comment on tonight's public hearing regarding civil infractions, not short-term rentals, just civil infractions. We need a mechanism in place to address ordinance violations. It's pretty simple. Otherwise, why have ordinances? Our aim is to deter any illegal activity and protect the well-being of the township. Ordinances will hold no weight without a civil infraction mechanism. Again, why would we even have ordinances if there is no way to take care of them? But the devil is always in the detail, right? I just shared with you why we need a civil infraction mechanism. What we need to do now is to revisit what this looks like, how to implement it, and when. I think it just needs to be made a little more clear for people to understand what it really means. I have faith in our board that these details will be worked out fairly. And I want to underline fairly. Again, I want to state that fairly. And this is why you voted for these people. And this needs to be done to resident satisfaction. This is our chance to do things right in Whitewater Township. For too long, we've been going in the wrong direction. Our prior board and PC chose not to address controversial topics, either due to incompetence or lack of conflict management skills. Like short-term rentals, this is a challenging topic and deserves to be addressed in a measured, thoughtful, fair, and reasonable way. You know, I admire passion, but in this case, residents who oppose a civil infraction mechanism of any kind have misdirected their energy, quite frankly. In closing, I'd like to talk about freedom. I love freedom, and I heard tonight there's a lot of people who love freedom. I think we all do. But with freedom comes responsibility. And that responsibility is to our neighbors, the people we live next door to, and down the road from. It cannot be self-serving. Thank you for your time.
Okay, the next Zoom public commenter is labeled as MMILING. You can unmute now. Go ahead and unmute on your end. You should be seeing an unmute request, MMILING. The user is not unmuting themselves. I'm sending unmute requests, but they have not unmuted themselves.
So Matt, can you please go to the next one and we can maybe come back?
That is the last person with their hand raised. There is one caller on a phone number, the dial-in. If you would like to raise your hand, you can do so by pressing *6. If *6 does not work on some of the older apps, it's *9. I do not see any more raised hands, and the user that could not unmute has dropped off.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing at 8:05 p.m. I need a second on that. So motion made by Slopsema and seconded by Milnick. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? None opposed. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is board discussion regarding the proposed civil infraction ordinance. So would one of you like to start? And don't forget to unmute your microphone. Any comments from anybody?
I'll make some.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to thank everybody for speaking, and I think there were some really good ideas that were shared. I took a lot of notes, and I think it'll be helpful in helping me formulate my opinion about what I think the community could tolerate, I think would be the way to say it. It seemed a little balanced, have nothing, leave it the way it is, and there was also a little bit, it's okay, but it's just not what we can tolerate. It needs to be something different, more understandable, especially regarding the fines and how it, excuse me, how it gets interpreted. So I think there's more work to do.
Okay, others?
Okay, I'll go ahead. I would echo what Tim said, that it is good input. That was the whole purpose of the public hearing, to get this public input. I do have to, however, respond to Mr. Brewer's comments about my conflict of interest, and I want to explain that the action that he spoke of was not taken by me alone regarding his situation. It was the result of a majority vote of the residents of Wheeler Oaks who decided to pursue action against him and paid collectively for the cost of that. The action had nothing to do with the township's ordinance. It was cited that the township had just released a newsletter that said that it was not, that short-term rentals were not allowed, but the action that was taken was the collective action of all the residents enforcing the.
Excuse me, this is not public comment time. So you may not speak during this period. There is another public comment period later, but you may not continue to disrupt the meeting. Go
I'll be
ahead,
happy to
Randy.
provide documentation to all of that. So that's what I want to get out of the way first. If there's other comments, I might have other things to say too.
So, I'm sorry, I was making some notes. Did you have any other further comments regarding the civil infraction?
Well, I'm wondering if we're going to address the points that were made and the advertisements that were made in the not Record Eagle, but the Elk Rapids News, in terms of statements that are made in there that are factually incorrect.
I can take a crack at that. So, all of the board members did see a copy of what was published in the Elk Rapids News and what was dispersed onto people's mailboxes. I have a few comments on this based on consultation with our attorney, and I think it is important to continue to discuss and clarify things in the ordinance, but I did want to provide this feedback. There was a statement or just a general feeling that a civil infraction is more harsh than the existing misdemeanor process. The misdemeanor process is the default process for the state of Michigan law. And misdemeanor being dealt with within the criminal court system, this would give you a jury-type trial, which some people have referred to, but it also gives you a criminal record. So it is really felt by the legal community that a civil infraction is less harsh than the default process through the state of Michigan. As far as should there be more oversight in the civil infraction process, that is provided through the judicial system. There were some comments in here and made tonight about the burden of proof. The burden of proof also goes back to the state law requirements for evidence, and hearsay is not evidence. It is important to understand that if a civil infraction escalated to the circuit court, if you win, you don't pay any fees. Also, there was the question about, or the contention that the civil infraction doesn't require you to cite a violation, and that is not true. You do have to cite what ordinance was broken. We already addressed the whole thing about trial by jury. That's in the criminal court only. There were comments about fee escalations in here, and I think we all agree that, that we do need to look at how that is worded properly. But again, you don't pay fees if you are found not guilty. And basically, this whole civil infraction, I do believe one of the public comments did talk about when civil infractions became a way to deal with these type of problems that was authorized by the state of Michigan legislature. So that is, when people say there is no process, there is a process. It's specified in state law, and that's what's reflected in the ordinance. I would like to add further that I did spend time going through the general ordinances. We have 5 general ordinances on the books that deal with the following issues. We have General Ordinance 35 that addresses the use of human-powered wheeled vehicles at High Prairie Park on the tennis courts and basketball courts. We have General Ordinance 38 that's titled Junk. We have General Ordinance 39 titled Noise. We have General Ordinance 49, Abandoned Buildings, and we have General Ordinance 63 regarding vehicle parking, and that was related to blocking people's driveways. And so of these 5 ordinances, 4 of them, interestingly, specifically say the method for enforcement is civil infraction. So we don't have the civil infraction general ordinance to follow to enforce those. So I wanted everybody to be aware of that. I thought it was interesting that General Ordinance 35, which is the oldest of all these ordinances, is a $500 fine and a misdemeanor. So that's a criminal offense, which I find strange. And again, the dates of these ordinances, there were one from 2004, two from 2005. The abandoned buildings was in 2012, and that was a very specific procedure. It included civil infraction, but it also included a township board review. And then the most recent was the parking in 2023. I'd like to also address the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance currently states misdemeanor. So to change that would require a zoning ordinance amendment, as I mentioned earlier, and that would require another public hearing. And then lastly, I'd just like to say I appreciate everybody coming out and sharing your thoughts on that and the suggestions that were provided as well.
I'll make my comments. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Your opinions and the discourse that we had tonight is very valuable, and this is what we're here for, to hear what you guys have to say and to do the will of the people. So I appreciate everybody speaking your minds about it and giving such good feedback. I guess my stance has been and still is at this point that I do not support this civil infraction adoption for a lot of the reasons that you guys stated, but primarily my main concern at this point is that I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse. I've said this many times. We have ordinances such as the ones that Linda just cited that need to be cleaned up. It's not a problem of having a way to enforce those ordinances. It's a problem that our ordinances are not clear to begin with. And we're in the middle of, this big, huge community dilemma on what to do with short-term rentals. And I see this as being definitely, again, putting the cart before the horse until we figure out what we're going to allow or not allow in this community with short-term rentals. I don't think that we should try to be enforcing something that we can't even define at this moment. So therefore, I would not support this until we clean up our ordinances. And I am also for greatly simplifying this, putting it in regular language, making it as resident-friendly as possible. I've also done a lot of research on what the difference is between a civil infraction and a criminal infraction, and primarily, I guess what it kind of boils down to me is a civil infraction is a lot easier to enforce from the township. It is a lot harder to enforce a criminal infraction, but in my opinion, it should be harder for the township to enforce something when we're talking about taking freedoms away from people. So I am not upset that we have that challenge of enforcing things through a criminal ordinance, which is what we have right now. It takes a lot more time, effort, money, and we really need to be selective on who we're really going to go after. In the words of our own zoning administrator a few months back at a meeting, she said that she was doing very well with the criminal infraction ordinance that we have right now, getting enforcement. And it's not because she's going out and filing criminal suits. She is just following the steps of giving notices, giving citations, talking to the people, and going through this very extensive process to get compliance. And that's what we all want at the end of the day, is just compliance. I also am not interested whatsoever in policing my neighbors. I just don't want to be part of it. So I have a lot of reasons. I was going to go back to just some of the differences. So, it is a lot worse scenario for the outcome of a criminal infraction. So if you are accused of doing something and it goes all the way through the court system, you could have a criminal record. With a civil infraction ordinance, you would not, so that is a benefit. But again, it's a lot harder to get that criminal, proof. I also, in a civil infraction, I'm not a big fan that you are kind of guilty. I mean, you can term it any way you want, but it is kind of like you are guilty unless you prove yourself wrong or prove yourself right, prove yourself innocent. You basically need to pay the fine or you have to go to court, and I don't like that verbiage. I think that that would be something that would drastically need to be changed as well. Again, what I've read is that, again, a civil infraction needs to be very clearly defined on what ordinance you are fining a person for, and we have a lot of problems with our enforcements. There's a thing called enabling language that we need to look at, and all of our ordinances, if we adopt the civil infraction, should include that they are, according to like the few that we have there, that they are taken care of by civil infractions. So we have a lot of work to do on our ordinances before we can even approach this. Of course, a lot of people already mentioned that you don't have a jury by your peers. The evidence in prior cases shows that judges often favor townships in civil infraction cases. Also, this civil infraction can put liens on your home and garnishments, so you do have the potential to lose your home. There's just a lot of things. There's a lot of really good information out there, and I would highly suggest everybody do their own homework. I'm not entirely against a civil infraction ordinance, but I am very against the one that we have proposed right now for all these reasons and more.
Okay, any further comments from the board members or discussion? Okay, next piece of business is regarding this grant that is being offered to us. So Whitewater Township Park has been selected to receive a donation from the Tom Cosgrove Foundation. The donation is intended to support current and future special events at the park. Specifically, these funds will be used to cover supplies and reimbursements related to the upcoming Halloween weekend, this coming weekend, as well as to provide financial support for future special events hosted by the park. So it's the recommendation that the board formally accept the donation from the Tom Cosgrove Foundation with gratitude and be designated for supplies and reimbursements associated with the Halloween weekend event and funding support for future events at Whitewater Township Park. So I'm going to make a motion to accept the donation from the Tom Cosgrove Foundation to Whitewater Township Park to be used for the Halloween weekend in 2025 and event supplies and reimbursements for future park events.
I'll second that motion.
So motion made by Slopsma and seconded by Kester. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Those opposed? None opposed, motion passes. Announcements. Township regular board meeting is next Thursday, October 9th at 6:30 p.m. Special meeting? Oh, and that does include a public hearing as well on the special assessment district on Skeegamog Point Road. Do any other board members have any other announcements?
So to be clear, there's no action being taken on the civil infraction ordinance this evening?
I don't hear a motion on the floor to take an action on the civil infraction ordinance tonight, so I would say no action taken at this meeting. All right, no other board member announcements?
No.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to general public comment. So the same rules apply. Please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Who would like to make a public comment?
Greg Haugen, 5661 Williamsburg Road. Thank you guys for your time and being at this meeting. Since you've talked to, I've come to some different conclusions, but I still am against this for most of the reasons. Sorry. And I just feel like, it just needs some more clarification on most avenues. And just thank you for everybody coming up to speak, and have a good night.
All right, thank you. Who else?
Dan Brewer, 9043 Wheeler Oaks Drive. What you heard tonight was not a 50-50 of anything. It was a 98.2%. No civil infraction rules. It wasn't even close. the majority of the people by far said no action, not go back and revisit it. They said no. That was pretty freaking clear. So I think that anything beyond this here should wait till the next election cycle where it could be voted on. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, would anybody else like to make a public comment?
Jessica Mangus, 5101 Brown Bear Lane. The funny part here is I want to think of what to say, but I wasn't sure if anyone else was going to go before me, and I might be the last one here. And this is a little more directed both at the board and at the public. You guys all ran as a team, as one platform. And I feel it is important to mention to everybody that, to you, you're 5 individuals. Whatever commitment you had to get into the positions that you were individually voted in, and you have individual responsibilities. If there's any degree of peer pressure from the previous commitments you had, I can't say that I hope that they're dismissed, because I do hope that all of you guys can come to a respectful agreement. But I also think that there is a lot of value towards having people that don't know each other. And with elections moving forward, if there's any degree of, I guess, a bit of, I think, unnecessary discourse or perception or just gossip, a lot of that I think wouldn't have occurred at all if it was 5 strangers. And there's something to consider, that if we ever see another team come up, it's worth considering them all individually. I also am a little bit curious, because I think each of you guys could do just fine on like the previous board. You probably would have been my favorite member from the previous board if you were there, just by causing things like discussion and giving some attention to the positions that you're in. Besides that, on the topic of the civil infraction ordinance versus the criminal potential, someone earlier mentioned, well, they're breaking the law. If they're breaking the law, then they're breaking the law. Personally, I would rather be a criminal that still owns my house than be completely free and clear so I can apply for my next rent or my next apartment or wherever I'd end up afterwards if I lost something as valuable as a home here. And my generation just does not have the resources to bounce back from some of the fines that are discussed if anything were to go poorly. And those are only compounded by things like having kids, having, say, a marriage go south. Any of those kinds of things will make something like a rusty swing set at the very back of your mind until it drains your bank account. And I hope that never happens, regardless of how this is implemented or how it's enforced. Besides that, I do hope that it ends up being legible, because if this is the way, this is the consequence, everybody should know how it works. There shouldn't be any degree of confusion. It should be just as simple as, well, you sped, you get a ticket. That's all. And thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment?
Rod Consaitis, 6204 Elk Lake Road, Kuncaitis. It's not Greek, it's Lithuanian. So, just some food for thought as you move forward with this. Long Lake Township has been approached by numerous townships in Michigan regarding their CIO and their short-term rental policy. One of the stalwarts of it is that they have been able to keep frivolous lawsuits down to 3 complete lawsuits last year, avoided all the frivolous. And the way they've done it is, if you accuse me and we go to court and I'm found not guilty, you pay me 5 times the fees that you're gonna put in your CIO, and you cover my court costs and my attorney. You're not gonna come after me for some frivolous thing then. And that's what they did out in Long Lake. Give them a call. Thank you.
Randy Steelman again. When we voted for you guys, we thought you'd go through the current mess of ordinances, and we were looking forward to a group of people that are, going to go through and clean up what's there. It is a mess, and everybody knows it. That's what we wanted you guys to do. And one of the issues that people are complaining about with this group is that you guys are suddenly making more rules and more regulations and you're bringing these things forward. And I know that you're doing it with goodwill and good intent. I know that you guys want to do good for the community that you live in and work in and everything else. But we really wanted you to clean up that other stuff. We didn't want more rules and regulations. We wanted the ones that we had to be easy to understand and easy to follow, and so we don't have to argue with people about, well, that's right and that's wrong. And we just wanted it clear and concise. And I think you guys could spend the next 3 years doing that, and it would be wonderful. And you guys could get some real stuff done and make the people really happy. The civil infraction could be brought forward once we have those nice, simple rules, and maybe a simple infraction process could then be warranted. It makes sense. I don't think we shouldn't never have one. I just think that's the cart before the horse kind of thing. Also, before this stuff came up, we had a handful of complaints a year about, these issues, whether it be a blight or a short-term rental next door or whatever. We had a handful of those issues every year. They kind of did whatever, they went away. Well, since we started talking about civil infractions and STRs and all that, all of a sudden there's 10 of them a month. The poor zoning lady has got to work her butt off. That just kind of shows how even bringing this stuff up is making it more complicated for the community and causing distress and problems. All of a sudden, neighbors are against neighbors and things like that we didn't have before. So anyway, thank you guys.
Thank you, Randy.
You can always just put it in the garbage.
Okay, does anybody else have a comment they would like to make?
Kim Angus, 5101 Brown Bear. I guess I want to speak to my comment before. I know it sounds a lot of times I'll sound very forceful and maybe even a good bit harsh. And a lot of that is my background. When I look at my neighbors, I look at my community. I was not born into this community. I was not lucky enough for that to happen. I chose this community. This is where I wanted to be. I've lived all over the country. And my background fundamentally is in human services. That's where I started. So that does cloud, form how I see things, how I see the world. And I see all the ways that an ordinance like this that isn't properly structured could hurt my friends and neighbors. Now, I know the intent is to help and to clean things up, and believe me, I have some neighbors that could use some cleaning. And they might say the same about me. But I'm hoping that you're really hearing our community. If you can take even the mass majority of the protections that our current criminal system, yes, it's more harsh if you're found guilty, but if you can take the protections, the system, the forced circumstance of our township having to work through the process, talking to people, working with them, slowly incremental change, you can eliminate a lot of those abuses, a lot of that harm, a lot of that hurt. At the end of the day, we are citizens. We are not subjects. A lot of people will give up things in their yard, but they will fight to the death if you try to take them. It's all about tone. It's all about intent. And if you want to move forward eventually with the civil infractions ordinance, most definitely get the general ordinances cleaned up. They are a bloomin' mess. And then come back with a civil infractions ordinance that is easy to read, easy to understand, not overly punitive, and has the protections that our current system affords us. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to make a comment?
Do you need my name again, Kay? Do you need my name on this again? I might as well follow one rule.
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Heidi Volmuth, 8388 Winnie Lane. You know what's really funny about this, all these meetings that I've been in and sat through? All you guys like each other. I know it because I've seen you shake hands. Randy, I've seen you disagree to disagree and still shake hands. You guys got your work cut out for it. Write something that we can all live with and that works. Because what these guys aren't understanding is be the neighbor that needs the rules and just watch your other neighbor destroy everything and you don't have one leg to stand on. You ought to try that one. It sucks.
All right, is there anybody else that would like to make a comment?
Mike Jacobson, Skigmog Point Road. I agree with Randy and Jill. The civil infraction thing is putting the cart in front of the horse. And I really like what Randy said about we voted you in hopes that you were going to clean up the mess we had. Because I know there's a few of you on the board that know what kind of mess we had and we're already working on it. And I think a lot of us thought, I know I did, a lot of us thought that's the direction you were headed. So the civil infraction thing kind of muddies up that water. I think our zoning needs to be cleaned up and made to be right before we start trying to figure out a new way to enforce it. I still am not for the civil infraction ordinance. I've lived in this community just about as long as everybody else that's been here a whole lifetime. And it's worked very well all these years. Very few people have ever had to go to court. I think the audience learned tonight. There was a big cry for from the audience wanting to vote on this, and we learned tonight why that's not an option. But I believe the idea of a survey to get the complete community's input on it is a great idea. Like, should be followed through on, in my opinion. I appreciate all your time and all your effort. We all want what's best for this community. We all just don't see it happening in the same way. And that's why these discussions are important. And I'd invite any one of you to come sit in my yard and have a discussion. I'd come sit in your yard if that's what it takes. I think you need to get to know the people that you don't like, or that you don't like the way they're living or the way their yard looks. Get to understand them before you try to penalize them. I think that's pretty important. Thank you for your time.
I'm Al Keaton, Schofield Trail. When we did the master plan, we had a couple of workshops, and I was surprised in how well and the information we gleaned out of those workshops. And what you need to do is, this is obviously very problematic. You need to schedule a workshop, have the people here, and put them in little groups like we did there, and come up with the answers that we seek. And I think that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Dave Williams, 11552 Watson Road. So I think hearing all the comments tonight from all the different people, is all different walks of life. as Mike said, other people have said, not everybody knows each other. We need to work a little better on knowing each other and knowing where we come from. You guys have been accused of not living here your whole life. I haven't lived here my whole life either. I won a sack race right there in 2nd grade, so I've been here a while. But we grew up, myself as a younger person, maybe I'm not that young anymore, but I feel like it. We've grown up in this community, and we've been provided with all the assets that come from all of these people. I don't know everybody here. I know several people here. I know lots of the kids of people that are here, kids that have lived here. We've grown up not here because we're rich. We're here because this is where our parents chose to live. This is where I've come back and chose to live. We can't afford crazy penalties for living life. My house needs a new roof. I've got to save money for it. I don't just have it in a bucket. Like, I have to go to work. I work 60, 70, 80 hours a week because I got to make money. I have to put a roof on my house. I have to put a new dryer in. You know, I have expenses that are very expensive. We don't have big, safety nets. They're not significant. I want to have a place for my kids to run around outside. And I know that was afforded to me as a child because my friends' parents, my friends' families, my friends' neighbors had a car in the yard to take a headlight out of, as we heard earlier. They've had piles of windows next to their barn because they have windows to fix their windows or to build a shed. The gardens that all the food came out of, those were built out of things that people had, not because we had the capability to just go get these things. We had to build them from nothing. And when we look at these steep penalties for just living life, it seems like we're penalized for trying to live in our own homes. Why do we have to do that? What? Because somebody else doesn't think they like the look of our garden, the look of our mailbox, the look of our grass. There's days I don't have time to mow the grass. I get home when it's dark and I leave when it's dark. My mower doesn't have headlights, and the neighbors would probably be mad if I was out mowing at midnight. So I don't. Sometimes the grass gets longer than it should. That's just life. Those are things that we have to put off till the next day, and then we do them later. To be penalized for that, I already have to go to work to make the money to put a roof on my house. I don't want to make the money. If I can't mow the lawn for 3 days, it's going to cost me $500. That doesn't make any sense. If there's some sort of regulation, which really seems ridiculous, as the caller on the Zoom meeting said, we have this ordinance, we don't have any enforcement for it, then I guess we should get the ball rolling on getting rid of the enforcement to begin with. Clearly, it's not necessary. But if we do have to have it, make sure it's reasonable. We have to live here.
Thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment?
The northern lights are out.
Thank you, Rod. Okay. All right, then with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Linda, could I make one clarifying comment, though, I guess?
Sure.
With regard to, I know there was comments made about the state of the township zoning ordinances and all the ordinances for that matter, and I won't want to leave residents with the impression that things are other than they are. And I want to take you back a couple of years where, not too long ago, where, and there are a couple of members of the Planning Commission here can attest to that, the zoning ordinance, about a third of it was labeled draft. It was a complete mess. There was no connection between, you could not search that document because there were multiple PDFs. That work has been done now. We now have a master plan that says something. The previous one said very little about what the future of the township should be like. There's a lot of work that's been done in order to shore up the ordinances and the planning documents for the township. There's a lot more work has to happen. It becomes more substantive, and if you're interested, there's a planning commission meeting tomorrow night that you'll hear some of that. We're taking it piece by piece and working through the various shortcomings that were identified in the master plan that need to be addressed in order for us to move forward with a zoning ordinance that does what it needs to do.
I would like to add that we have 2 openings coming up on the Planning Commission, and There is an application on the front of the website if anybody is interested in serving on the Planning Commission. This is a standard thing where 30% of our commissioners expire every calendar year. So just want to put that out there if you're interested in that topic and want to help with that. All right.
I second the motion.
All right, so motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.